Hi everyone, thank you for tuning in to this session. My name is Phong and I head up the research and trends team at Cicles Life, a global digital telco startup. Today I'm privileged to share with you a topic close to my heart, operating an insight engine in a startup environment. Coming from Visa, the leading payment tech company, I have experienced a major transition in mindset and know-how in the ways market and consumer research is conducted, and I'm happy to share with you some of my learnings on this journey. There are three areas I would like to take you through today. First of all, how is doing insights in a startup environment different? Then, with that difference in mind, how do we build an insight operating model that is suited to the needs of startups? And last but not least, how can we inculcate a culture of insight-backed conviction in a startup environment? Perhaps there's a phrase that I could capture my shift from a global established company to a startup environment, then it will be culture shock. We tend to joke that the intersection of fast, cheap, and good doesn't exist in the research world. But I have to tell you, the bar is so high in startups that by being resourceful and ingenious, one can find a way to make do with what one has to make fast, good, and cheap happen. The reality of the startup environment is that being inventive and resourceful is a reality of everyday life. While we do not have the resources and time to go through endless cycles of research nevertheless is still an important backbone for any business, product, and marketing decision at a startup like Cicles Life. But how can we be nimble and clever about it? Here I would like to borrow the learnings from the story of David versus Goliath. Now there are many things you can learn from this story, of course, like courage, confidence, etc. But one thing stood out for me. You can win with few resources against a big obstacle when you can make use of what you already have. Be flexible, be like water. Why? Because the water always takes the shape of its environment, of its containers, and flexes its form. So how do we do that? In this second section, I'm going to share here a few humble learnings on my journey of building an insight engine at my company. One thing I have done at Cicles Life is ruthless prioritization. When faced with limited resources, not everything that can be researched should be researched. One way of doing that, which I learned from my product colleagues, is they prioritize their roadmap, is thinking about the cost of not knowing and the value of knowing, as well as the time criticality of the project before giving it a priority label. Another way of doing it is thinking about the clarity of the problem and the risk. The higher the risk and the less clear the problem is, the more research needs to be done. In this way, you can focus the team's resources on the projects that really matter. Another key point is to recognize that not every project has to be a big, hairy $1 million segmentation study. We can and should make research more iterative. Doing smaller but more frequent research is the name of the game, where each project's learning can serve as a springboard for the next one, such that by the time the series of study is completed, a solid learning library can be amassed. What that means is that perfection is the enemy. Instead, how can we think about the minimum viable research? What is the most important thing we need to learn in the shortest amount of time and with the minimum amount of financial resources and human capital? Instead of waiting for a 12 focus group study to be set up, which may take a month, can we talk to 5 or 6 consumers using a quick platform like usertesting.com, learn from these consumers, form new hypotheses, and talk to another 5 or 6 consumers in the span of that same month before we complete learnings are accumulated. Another point is that it is critical to us at Cicles Life in building an insight engine to use research technology or ResTech, from data collection, analysis, visualizations to research repository, here's an example of the tech stack that we use at Cicles Life. But of course, the landscape is ever evolving. As you can see from these maps here, the key is to understand the needs of your organization at every stage of the research cycle and right size the technology selected so that there is agility and efficiency in the research operations. What also helps to reduce wastage of precious resources when doing research in a small organization is the continuous socializations of insights. At Cicles, we have a monthly newsletter to highlight the latest learnings from our various research programs, the inspirations from outside sources, and the future trends, so stakeholders can feel inspired but also stay aware of what is already known. For more active browsing, we have centralized all of our learnings into a single research repository using Dovetail and made the checking of the repository prior to research requesting a compulsory step for stakeholders so that no research will be duplicating past efforts. Now, last but not least, the process of insight discovery in Cicles Life or in any small startup is and should not be a bureaucratic process with multiple stage gates and reviews before insights can be discussed. Instead, we need to embrace the messiness of the co-creation process and be comfortable with imperfect. This means prioritizing discussion and debate of data points and interpretations over the preparation of long, beautiful PowerPoint decks is the most useful research, is the research that is used and funneled into the next stage of action. But how can that research inspire action? In this third section, we will touch a bit on how research is central to the culture of conviction. Ultimately, for every product and marketing decision, I have tried to encourage my stakeholders at Cicles to be clear about three things. What we try to learn, how can we be sure about what makes the cut, and how we can prioritize outcomes. For the prioritization of outcomes, we have reviewed 100 plus product prioritization frameworks before distilling them into the framework you see on the screen here. Center around three pillars: value, right to win, and operational requirement, against which every product and marketing decision can be evaluated with input from research and prioritized. For value, we are talking about three dimensions: the value for the customers, how important is the product or features or the marketing decision to customers, how dissatisfied customers are with current solutions. Value for the business, what is the market growth rate, what is the market share, number of users, and frequent usage. And fit, whether it is fit with the vision of the company or it is fit with the brand. The second dimension that we look at is our right to win. Is our product solution or features novel enough, differentiated with what is in the market already, relevant to consumer needs, and appealing to them? And the last dimension is about the operational requirements. Do we require a lot of effort to make these product features a reality? Is it feasible to start with? What is the amount of complexity? What is the cost in terms of human resources and time required to bring the product features into production? With these three pillars and the sub-dimensions that it represents, we have a robust framework to make sure that everything we do is of the maximum value to the company. I hope that the short session today has given you some glimpses into how I build and operate an insight engine at a startup. The journey is far from over, and I'm sure that there are still plenty of trials and tribulations as well as new learnings for me on the road ahead. I just want to leave you here with my three key takeaways. Constraints will be your best friends when doing research for a startup. Resourceful research may be quick, but it's not necessarily dirty. Embrace research technology and have a beta mindset as you conduct your research. Last, have a framework that uses research to build conviction and priorities for the team. I'm looking forward to my discussion with you and hearing your points of view on research in a startup environment. I'll just leave you here with a quote from Bruce Lee, which inspired the title of this presentation. Be water, my friend. Empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless like water. You put water into a cup, it becomes a cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes a bottle. You put it into a teapot, it becomes a teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend. Thank you very much.